The headline is simple and strange. The United States government has reportedly asked OpenAI to slow-roll GPT 5.6. Not a normal product launch, not a normal beta. A limited preview with access controlled customer by customer, while officials study security risks. In this fictional debate, Adam Smith and Karl Marx are not here as ghosts making predictions. They are characters used to test one question. Should Washington decide who gets the most powerful AI first? According to reporting from Axios, The Verge, and TechCrunch, OpenAI is expected to provide GPT 5.6 first to a small group of approved partners, instead of making the model broadly available at once. The reported concern is national security, especially advanced cyber capability. The policy background is a June executive order that describes a voluntary framework for frontier model testing, including government access before broader release. The unresolved question is whether a voluntary safety review has become a date.
I would begin with a distinction. A free market is not a market without rules. Commerce depends on trust, predictable law, and protection against force and fraud. If a new instrument can magnify cyber offense, then some short inspection before wide distribution may protect the market itself. But the moment inspection becomes favoritism, monopoly, or arbitrary license, it ceases to defend liberty. The test is whether the delay is narrow, temporary, and governed by public principles.
The first thing to ask is not whether the word security sounds reasonable. It often does. The first thing to ask is who receives the machine, who is excluded, and whose interests the state serves while making that decision. If the most advanced model goes first to approved firms, approved agencies, and approved partners, then the productive power of society is being rationed through political and corporate channels. That is not neutral caution. It is control over access to production.
Let us make the strongest case for the delay. The government says frontier models can reveal vulnerabilities, automate attacks, or give hostile actors capabilities that defenders are not ready to absorb. The executive order talks about classified benchmarking and trusted partners. Smith, if GPT 5.6 really crosses a threshold in cyber capability, why should the public object to a pause measured in weeks rather than years?
Because cyber risk is not borne only by the buyer of the model. A careless release could impose costs on banks, hospitals, utilities, schools, and ordinary households. Economists would call that an externality. The private party captures the benefit, while others pay part of the risk. In such cases, government may set rules that force the seller to account for the social cost. A short, evidence-based preview can be justified if it lowers that external cost without selecting winners.
But the phrase social cost can hide a class decision. The state does not hover above society as pure reason. It is entangled with the largest firms, the defense apparatus, and the owners of capital. When it says trusted partners, it rarely means the public, workers, teachers, independent developers, or small communities. It means institutions already close to power. So the delay does not merely reduce risk. It distributes the next advantage to those who already have advantage.
The detail that changes the temperature is not just a delayed launch. It is reported customer by customer approval. A model can be in preview because the developer is testing reliability. A model can be restricted because compute is scarce. But when government officials help decide which customers get early access, the policy moves from safety review into access control. Smith, can that still fit inside a free market framework?
It can, but only under severe conditions. The criteria must be known in advance. The duration must be short. The decision must be appealable. The same rules must apply to powerful and modest applicants alike. A government may inspect a bridge before the public crosses it, but if officials quietly allow certain merchants to cross first, trade goods first, and profit first, then inspection has become privilege. A free society needs rules, not private favors disguised as public safety.
The first users do not merely receive a toy before others. They learn how to reorganize labor before others. They build processes, data pipelines, products, and defenses while competitors wait. They capture the learning curve. If the early users are already the largest enterprises or strategic partners, then the state has helped deepen concentration. Later, when the model is public, the small firm hears that access is equal, but the decisive period has already passed.
The reporting also places this inside a global race. American labs are competing with Chinese open-source models, and policymakers fear bad actors, spies, and cybercriminals. The United States wants innovation, export strength, and national security at the same time. Those goals pull against one another. Smith, what happens if a cautious government slows the leading American model while foreign rivals move faster?
Delay is not free. Innovation is a process of trial, feedback, error, and improvement. If useful tools are trapped too long in narrow channels, the nation loses discovery from thousands of unexpected users. A shopkeeper, a hospital administrator, a county engineer, a student, or a security researcher may find uses that no central office can imagine. So I accept a short review only as a bridge to broad lawful access, never as a permanent checkpoint.
National competition is often used to discipline the public. Workers are told to accept surveillance because rivals abroad are dangerous. Citizens are told to accept secrecy because national power is at stake. Small firms are told to wait because trusted partners must move first. The language of competition can become a way to silence democratic debate. The question is not whether China matters. The question is whether fear of China becomes a blank check for domestic hierarchy.
This story also lands after a harsher episode around Anthropic's advanced models, reported under names like Fable and Mythos. Coverage described government pressure, access restrictions, and concern over who could use models with dangerous capability. The new OpenAI case appears less absolute, but it raises a similar issue. When a model becomes powerful enough, does the government treat access as a national security asset?
Panic is a poor lawmaker. If officials discover a concrete vulnerability, they may need emergency powers for a short interval. But emergency action must have a clock, a record, and a path back to normal rules. The great danger is that a temporary exception becomes a habit. Markets can adapt to clear regulation. They cannot thrive under rumors, selective permission, and sudden restrictions that nobody can price, predict, or challenge.
The exception is not outside the system. It reveals the system. When a technology matters enough, the polite fiction of equal exchange gives way to command. You may use it, you may not, you must wait, you are trusted, you are not. The state and capital do not abolish competition. They manage competition in favor of strategic interests. That is why the public should not be impressed by the word temporary unless it has real power to end the temporary measure.
Let us move away from the labs and agencies. What about ordinary workers, small businesses, independent developers, and local governments? A model like GPT-5.6 could automate coding, research, compliance, design, cyber defense, and planning. Is only approved enterprises see it first, everyone else learns later. Smith, is that merely the normal pattern of beta access, or is it a problem for opportunity?
Opportunity requires diffusion. The wealth of a nation is not created only by great companies. It is created by countless improvements in ordinary work. If advanced AI remains concentrated among a small approved group, productivity gains may arrive as market power rather than general prosperity. I would therefore ask for a quick movement from tested access to broad access, with safety obligations attached to use, not permanent scarcity attached to permission.
Workers are always told the machine is coming after decisions have already been made. In this case, early access may let selected firms redesign jobs before employees, unions, schools, and local communities understand the tool. The owners receive time to plan displacement. Labor receives the announcement. If the state is involved in allocating access, then workers should have direct representation in that allocation. Otherwise, public power is being used to accelerate private restructuring.
The strongest argument for government involvement is cyber defense. If a model can discover vulnerabilities faster, chain exploits, or help write offensive tooling, then the first release could affect hospitals, power systems, finance, and public infrastructure. But the same model might also help defenders patch faster. Smith, how should policy handle a tool that strengthens both the lock and the burglar?
First, test the model against well-defined, dangerous capabilities. Second, share warnings with defenders before criminals can exploit them. Third, assign responsibility for negligent deployment. If a company sells a tool that predictably causes widespread harm, it should not hide behind the romance of innovation. But if a government delays safe defensive use while attackers improve elsewhere, it also creates harm. The answer is disciplined testing plus accountable release, not fear without measurement.
Classified benchmarking may be necessary for some details, but secrecy also protects authority from criticism. If the public cannot know the threshold, cannot know why one customer is approved, and cannot know whether a decision favors a politically connected firm, then security becomes a priesthood. It says, "Trust us, because you cannot inspect us." A democratic society should resist that posture, especially when the resource being allocated may transform production.
The executive order uses the language of voluntary engagement and says it does not require mandatory licensing or pre-clearance. But a request from the federal government can carry weight, even when it is not framed as a formal command. A company that depends on contracts, regulation, export policy, and political goodwill hears such requests differently. Smith, when does voluntary cooperation become soft coercion?
It becomes coercion when refusal is punished, even indirectly. If the state wants a rule, let it make a rule through lawful channels. If it wants cooperation, let the terms be written, limited, and reviewable. Informal pressure is dangerous because it avoids the discipline of law while still shaping behavior. Commerce cannot flourish when the most important rule is whispered in a meeting and enforced by fear of displeasing officials.
The whisper is often more efficient than the statute. It allows all parties to deny the command while obeying it. The firm can say it chose caution. The state can say it only advised. The public receives the outcome without the clarity of law. This is how modern power often operates, not only through police and courts, but through dependency, access, contracts, and reputational discipline. The voluntary label should not end the analysis.
Smith, suppose the government asks for your policy. You accept that frontier models may require some pre-release testing, but you want to protect competition and liberty. What are the rules?
First, a fixed time limit, for example 30 days, unless a court or statute says otherwise. Second, objective capability thresholds, not political discomfort. Third, an appeal path for denied customers. Fourth, public disclosure of the process, even if some test details remain classified. Fifth, strict neutrality among firms. The government may protect the public from genuine danger, but it must not allocate commercial advantage. Safety policy should reduce risk while expanding lawful access as soon as possible.
Marx, your turn. You do not trust a narrow alliance between state officials and large AI firms. But you also understand the technology could create real cyber danger. What would democratic control look like instead of elite access control?
First, workers in affected communities must have seats in oversight, not merely executives and security agencies. Second, public interest institutions need access and compute, not only large corporations. Third, every restricted preview should be audited for who gained economic advantage. Fourth, the model must not be used to intensify workplace surveillance or suppress organizing. Fifth, benefits from public involvement should return to the public. If society bears the risk, society must share the power.
There is another pressure in this story: open source and open weight AI. If American closed labs restrict access too tightly, developers may turn to foreign or open alternatives. That can weaken the gate. It can also reduce visibility into what people are actually using. So the United States faces a strange balance. Too much openness may accelerate dangerous use, but too much closed-door control may push innovation into places the government can see less clearly.
Open inspection is often a friend of safety. A bridge examined by many engineers is more likely to reveal its weaknesses. Software reviewed by many defenders may become sturdier, I do not say every model weight must be released at once. I do say the government should not confuse secrecy with security. A broad community of researchers, small firms, and public institutions can find risks and uses that a small approved circle will miss.
Open source can be emancipatory, but only if people have the means to use it. If the weights are open but compute is controlled by a few cloud providers, then the promise is partial. If the code is public but the data, hardware, and energy are concentrated, capital still rules the field. That is why access policy cannot stop at model files. It must include compute, labor, public institutions, and the economic structure around the machine.
The headline is dramatic, but the next details matter more. Watch for the exact length of the preview. Watch whether rejected customers receive reasons. Watch whether universities, public defenders, hospitals, local governments, and small businesses are represented. Watch whether access goes mostly to firms that already have federal relationships. And watch whether the public ever sees a report explaining what risk was found and what changed before broader release. Now the central question, is this good for the United States? Not good for one administration, not good for one lab, not good for one group of early customers. Good for the country. That means security, innovation, democratic legitimacy, competition, workers, and small businesses. Smith give the most honest answer. Yes, no, or it depends.
It depends, and the conditions are everything. A brief, transparent safety review can be good for the United States if it prevents widespread harm and then quickly opens the market. But a customer-by-customer approval system that becomes normal would be bad for the United States. It would weaken competition, invite favoritism, and teach innovators to seek permission rather than serve customers. The American advantage is not merely having powerful firms.
I would say it is bad unless transformed by democratic control. The stated motive may be safety, but the structure is elite allocation of productive force. The United States cannot become more free by letting officials and dominant firms decide who receives the central machines of the age. If the public is asked to trust this restriction, then the public must have power over it. Otherwise, the gate will protect hierarchy while calling itself security.
Notice the unexpected common ground. Neither side argues for reckless release. Neither side says cyber risk is imaginary. The real dispute is institutional design. Who sets the threshold? Who gets early access? How long does the gate last? Who can appeal? Who watches the watchers? The policy can be a narrow safety inspection, or it can become a new industrial privilege. The line between those two is not rhetoric. It is enforceable process.
If I may close, prudence is a virtue, but permission is a temptation. The government should protect citizens against concrete harms, especially where private actors would impose risks on others. Yet liberty requires that such protection be bounded by law, not personal discretion. Give the model a safety review, publish the rules, open access broadly when the review is done. Let competition, not quiet approval, determine who makes the best use of the tool.
My closing is simpler. Every technical gate is also a social gate. If the model changes work, knowledge, defense, and administration, then access to it is access to future power. Do not ask only whether the gate is efficient. Ask who built it, who stands behind it, who profits from it, and who is left waiting outside. A society that calls itself democratic cannot outsource that question to executives and security offices alone.
Here is the 20-minute takeaway. A short frontier model safety review can be defensible. A hidden customer approval regime should make Americans nervous. If GPT-5.6 is delayed for testing, the country needs dates, criteria, appeal rights, and public reporting. If the first users get an economic head start, the country deserves to know why. The future of AI should not be reckless, but it should not be quietly assigned either. Your turn. Would you accept a 30-day government safety gate for frontier AI if the rules were public and access opened afterward? Or does any customer-by-customer approval system create too much risk of political favoritism? Put your answer in the comments as safety gate or power grab. And if you want the next debate, Make it the question nobody in Washington wants to answer. Who should own the productivity gains from AI?